Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be a review of all of the books that I read this January 2021. This is going to be a little bit more in-depth with reviews and whatnot. I have a cozy cup of tea and all of the physical books that I read at my feet, so let's get started. I missed a whole section. Purely a numbers game, I read 24 books this month, and with 10 of those being ebooks, all of them on Kindle Unlimited that I have stolen from my mother. 22 of those books were written by women, 2 were written by men, 17 of those books were written by white authors, and 7 were written by authors of color. So let's get started. The first book I read is called Beach Read by Emily Henry. This was good. It was a book of the month club book, and my mom is a member, so she reads them and then gives them to me, and the ones that I like I keep. So I liked this one, I kept it. This was 4 stars. I started reading it because I needed something light and I assumed that it would be, and it was. I really liked this book. Honestly, the reason that I did not give it 5 stars is because I was able to put it down a bunch of times, which 5-star reads I usually can't put down. But it was a really solid 4 stars. The next book I read was Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. I liked this book. I think I would have really liked it if I was younger, but for me personally, it read like a young adult, and I don't think I'm at that stage in my life anymore where I can sit down and read a young adult. I thought it was excellent. I was shocked at the end, but because I found the middle bits a little run-on-y, I gave it 3 stars, but it was really good. Definitely would recommend this to any young adult fantasy lovers. The next book I read is The Lost Love Song by Minnie Dark. So I actually got this in my Once Upon a Book Club box. The box itself is right around $50. There's an adult box and a young adult box, and then they'll send you a box and they also send you gifts to open along with the book that you're reading. So I don't know if that's why, but I felt like this book ran on. I think part of it had something to do with the gifts because I was just waiting until the next gift. I liked the story. I thought it was interesting how they bounced from person to person. We still had like our main characters. I liked the gifts. So 3.5 stars, The Lost Love Song by Minnie Dark. This is like a fiction. The next book is When You Were Mine by Rebecca Searle. This is like a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but focused on Rosaline's version of the story. I didn't like it. I think I didn't like it because I thought it was going to be a romance, so when it wasn't, it gave me a lot of anxiety. If I would have come into it knowing that it was not a romance, I would have liked it more. This is another young adult. I originally gave it 3.5 stars, and then weeks later I'm still anxious about it. It still makes me anxious. If you're into like modern retelling, there's a little bit of romance. I think it's more suspensey. I think that might be wrong, but in my personal opinion, it's more suspensey, less romancy, young adult, 2 stars. The next book is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. Loved this book. I loved it. 5 stars. I had no qualms. I had to read it in one night because that's what a 5-star means to me. People of color as the leads. It's written by a person of color. It had everything that I wanted. The romance. I loved it. I most likely will be reading it again along with all of her other books. 5 stars. Romance, adult. Next we have Speak by Lori Halls Anderson. I read this book when I was younger and I remember really liking it, and this is my sister-in-law's copy and she gave it to me to read, and I got to the very end before I realized I had read it before. But I mean, I loved it just as much this time. I think that this should be like a literal mandatory reading for people in high school. It does have some things that may need trigger warnings, but all in all, like I really liked it. I really liked it then, I really liked it now. I loved how it resolved, but it wasn't finished. Young adult coming of age, but look up trigger warnings. 4 stars. Wicked Lovely by Melissa Marr. This is another young adult. This is a young adult fantasy. I don't think I knew that this category existed when I was a child reading books. Like I read Harry Potter and then like immediately like switched to other things. I don't remember reading any fantasy books, and I have no idea why because I loved this book. I thought it was interesting. I thought the characters were really well thought out. I rooted for everybody except for the characters I wasn't supposed to root for, and I didn't root for them at all. I thought it ended really well. The reason it's 4 stars is because I didn't really think there were any surprises. Like, all of the surprises I guessed beforehand. That might be because I'm not young adult reading this book, but I would definitely recommend this book to any young adult fantasy lovers. 4 stars. In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. This is the book where I realized it was me, not Rebecca Searle, because this book broke me. It was written so beautifully. It kind of exemplified what everybody's always telling you about living your life in the now. The premise of this book is that this woman goes to sleep and she wakes up and she's 5 years into the future. It's only for an hour that she's in the future, 5 years. And then she goes back in time. As much as she can, she's trying to live her life, but she's always like, but 5 years in the future, this is gonna happen. 4 years in the future, this is gonna happen. So she's basically counting down to these days. It's literally beautiful. This was necessary, this was realistic, this was raw, and it was wonderful. 5 stars, which usually doesn't happen for me unless it's a romance, but 5 stars. Next we have Perfectly Misunderstood by Robin Daniels. This was an ebook. It was fun. It was a cute YA. I tend to prefer, if I'm doing young adult, I tend to prefer young adult romance over like young adult fiction. I think they're like sweet and cute and they're like all fumbly and like, I just think it's really cute. And also they tend not to be as risque when they're young adults because they're younger and it's geared towards a younger audience. I had planned to read the rest of the books in these series and then I looked at them and I had already read them. So there is a very good chance I'd already read this one as well and I just did not realize that I had. But 4 stars, young adult romance. The next book that I read is Lila Again by Stacey Wise. I read this for a book club, just kind of picked a book. I liked this book. I also read it on the Kindle. I liked this. I liked that we got insights into each of the characters because I feel like they didn't describe them well from other people's perspectives. Because I don't think the book would have been clear otherwise, if that makes sense. I wasn't a huge fan of how everything like wrapped itself up neatly in like a nice little bow. Also, I predicted what happened in the prologue as soon as we met the character. It was okay. It was a good book. It was a quick read. 3 stars. Next we have The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. I will literally never forget her. So do you remember when I said that the other book was heartbreaking but it was necessary? This was an unnecessarily heartbreaking book. It was a romance. It dealt in real adult issues. The main woman found out she has to get a hysterectomy. The main man likes the main woman but really wants kids. She's forcing them apart because of her situation, because she likes him too much to give up kids for her. This book went so hard. I cried the last 6 chapters and then calmed myself down, and then as I was explaining to my fiance what happened, I started the hysterics again because it was so overwhelming. It was so heartbreaking. I was talking about it the next day and I was crying. I will never get over this. 3 stars. Romance, but if you read this you will cry. Next I read Stuck With You by Alexandra Moody. It was a book that I read on Kindle. I read this one after I read The Friend Zone because I needed a book that would make me happy, so I just picked a cute young adult romance. It worked. It was good. It was what I needed. It was about the coronavirus, which was weird because in my mind we haven't had enough time to do that yet. Someone wrote a whole book about it, but it was cute, somewhat unbelievable, but whatever, it did the job. 3 stars. Next, I read The Tomboy and the Movie Star by M.L. Collins. This was another cute, easy, young adult romance. 3 stars. Pretty sure I've read the other books in this series because it seemed familiar to me. Young adult romance, 3 stars. Next is The Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. I really liked this book. It centered around enemies to lovers, gay. It's weird because once I actually got into the meat of the book, I read it in a night. But I couldn't give it 5 stars because I started the book and I couldn't get into it at first. This is an adult LGBTQIA romance. Very good, 4 stars. Next book I finished, not the next book I started, but the next book I finished, 30-Minute Therapy for Anxiety. I started this in December as my right before I go to bed book. I finished it and then I immediately read it again and marked some key points, things I wanted to try. It was good. It feels weird rating this book. I haven't actually put any of the tips that they give me in practice yet. I'm sure they work. I just haven't done them yet. Informational book. The next book we have is The Great Alone by Chris and Hannah. This was another book club pick. This is split into 3 sections. They do it by the years. I did not like the first section. I thought it was gruesome. I understand why it was there because we were supposed to recognize the harshities of the Alaskan winter. Like, I get it. Could have done without some of the graphics, to be honest. But I personally think it really turned around in the second and third parts. I thought it was really good. I loved how it ended, but I didn't really like how it started, if you know what I mean. This is an adult fiction, coming of age wilderness I gave it 4 stars. Next we have Love at First Fight by Carrie Aarons. This is another ebook. I found this author on TikTok. She was promoting the book. It sounded like my kind of book. I was like, here for it. It was really good. It was really cute. I gave it 4 stars just because it seemed a little unrealistic with how big the fight was and how easy the apology was, but it was really cute. I definitely would recommend it. 4 stars. Next we have another ebook, The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score. I really liked this one a lot. I personally gave it 5 stars. It was young. It was an adult romance. It wasn't too X-rated. I thought it was really good. The only qualm I had with it, which obviously didn't affect its star rating because this is not something that has to do with the actual book, I didn't like the title. The wedding was over like a third way through the book. So I was like, why are we still talking about him as a best man? Like, yeah, he was bad best man, but like, that's over. It was really good. 5 stars. Last book I read was Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. I love Christina Lauren. I've been trying to read as many of her books as possible. She has a ton on Kindle Unlimited, but I also have my little Christina Lauren section up here. So Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. I liked this book. I love Christina Lauren. I love her style of writing. I love her characters usually. I feel like everyone has ample background so that I can root for them. But I never really rooted for the guy in this one. I never really rooted for him. I wish I could tell you I did, but I really didn't. I don't know if it was just the scope of the betrayal at the beginning. I don't know what it was, but I did not root for him. I gave it 3.5 stars. But love her, will continue to read every single book she's ever put out. The next book I read is The Wide Receiver and His Best Friend's Little Sister by Maggie Dolan and Anne-Marie Meyer. This was cute. It was another young adult fiction. I'm pretty sure I've read this. I'm pretty sure I've read all of these. But it was good. 3 stars. It's young adult, romance, quick, easy read. I read it on Kindle Unlimited. Next is By a Thread by Lucy Score. I thought it was really sweet. It was a little longer than my usual adult romance books on Kindle. It took me 2 days to finish instead of my normal one. I gave it 4.5 stars just because it was a little bit too X-rated for me personally, but I thought it was really good. And if that's the kind of thing you want, it's an adult romance with lots of sexy scenes. 4.5 stars. Next we have Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I love Christina Lauren. I found this book on Kindle Unlimited and I was like, absolutely, I love Christina Lauren. It's free. Let's do it. I thought this book was really sweet. I don't know why I gave it 4 stars. It was too much. There was too much feeling for me. We didn't find out until the very end what happens in the beginning. So I was like, the whole time I was like, this guy's awesome. Why don't we like him? And then I don't know. It was 4 stars. It was a little too unnecessarily heartbreaking for me. So I gave it 4 stars. I still love Christina Lauren. Will continue to read everything that she's ever put out in the world, especially if it's on Kindle Unlimited. So, adult romance. The next book I read is The Sun and Her Flowers by Rumi Kaur. I have never read a poetry book before, so I got this and then it sat for literally a year in my to-be-read bookshelf because these are books I've read, and then I have a bookshelf full of books that I have not read so that I can pick them from there. I read this a little bit every night after I finished the anxiety book. I liked it. There's definitely a section I did not like. I did not like the second section, but I really liked the poetry a lot more than I thought I would. I did annotate it and the colors are based on the sections, but I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. The very last book that I read this month, I literally just finished it. It is January 31st. I finished this book 2 hours ago because I wanted to get it finished. It's called American Dirt by Janine Cummings. This is a fiction and it's all about a woman whose whole family is killed by the drug cartel in Mexico, except for her and her son. And she starts on her journey to take her son to the United States for a better life. This book was so good. It was so good. There was never a moment that I was like, this is unnecessary. It was not unnecessarily gruesome. It was not unnecessarily graphic. It was the perfect amount of gruesome and graphic for what they were going through. Like, it's literally a story about someone walking hundreds and hundreds of miles to the United States. Obviously, there's going to be some terrible experiences. Obviously, there's going to be some heartbreak. There's going to be some tragedies. But it wasn't unnecessarily either of those things, but it had just enough where you just want to protect them for any harm that's ever going to come to them ever again. I loved the characters. I loved their growth along the way. I loved this book. It's not one I can sit down and read in one sitting because it is kind of heavy and it's a lot heavier than the books that I usually read. So I gave it 4 stars, but it's a very solid high 4 stars. Definitely read this if you're interested in new age adult fiction. Very good. So that's all of the books that I've read this month. As I said, there are 24, more than I expected, but also none of them were overly long. I have been putting off reading a fantasy book because it's over 1,000 pages. Hopefully I will be reading that coming in February. That's it. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Bye.